Over 1.4 million Australian households are at risk of mortgage stress, and the number is climbing every single week. Families who once felt secure are now struggling to keep the lights on, choosing between groceries or paying the rent. It's not just happening in remote towns or outer suburbs. This crisis is creeping into major cities, impacting everyday Australians who never imagined they'd be in danger of losing their home. So what's really going on here? Is it just the interest rates, or is there something much bigger, much deeper, playing out behind the scenes? From broken housing policies to climate risks, foreign speculation to financial traps, the truth is far more alarming than most news headlines reveal. And chances are, it's already affecting someone you know, maybe even you. In this video, we're uncovering 10 hidden reasons why millions of Australians could lose their homes. Some of them will shock you. Others might finally make the whole puzzle click. But one thing's for sure, you need to know what's coming. Number 1. Rising interest rates. Just a few years ago, Australians were enjoying historically low interest rates, some as low as 2%. Fast forward to today, and those same rates have more than tripled, pushing many families to the financial edge. For someone with a $600,000 mortgage, a jump from 2% to 6% means over $1,200 more each month in repayments. That's not just a number. It's the grocery bill, the school fees, the family outings. Gone. And it's not just first home buyers who are feeling the heat. Millions of Australians on variable rate mortgages are now trapped in a financial storm they didn't see coming. Every time the Reserve Bank hikes the cash rate, household budgets shrink further, and mortgage stress spreads like wildfire. According to recent reports, over 50% of mortgage holders are already struggling to meet repayments, and it's only getting worse. But here's the most frightening part. Many Australians are stuck with loans they can't refinance. Why? Because the value of their homes has dropped, or their income no longer qualifies under tighter lending rules. They're locked in, cornered, and for thousands, the next rate increase could be the final nail, forcing them to sell or face foreclosure. This isn't just an economic cycle, it's a full-blown housing crisis in the making. Rising interest rates aren't just lifting numbers on a graph. They're tearing apart the financial foundations of everyday families, forcing them to make impossible decisions. And the scariest question remains, how high will rates go before something breaks? Number 2. Wage stagnation versus housing costs. For years, Australians have been told to work hard, save up, and buy a home. But what happens when you work just as hard, or even harder, yet your income stays the same while everything else skyrockets? That's the brutal reality millions are facing today. While the cost of living and housing prices have soared, wages have barely budged. In fact, when adjusted for inflation, real wages in Australia have gone backward over the last few years. Let's break it down. The average full-time weekly wage has risen by just 2 to 3% annually, but in that same time, housing prices jumped by over 20% in some cities. Renters aren't spared either. Median rents in places like Brisbane and Perth have surged over 30% in just 2 years. This growing gap means that more and more Aussies are spending over 40% of their income on housing alone, leaving little for savings, emergencies, or even basic needs. And it's not just affecting the lower income population. Middle-class families, once considered financially stable, are now slipping into housing insecurity. Teachers, nurses, and essential workers can no longer afford to live near their workplaces. Young Australians are delaying life milestones, marriage, children, home ownership, because the math simply doesn't work anymore. This is a slow, silent suffocation. Wage stagnation isn't just frustrating, it's deadly when paired with runaway housing costs. Without bold reforms or meaningful wage growth, the dream of home ownership is slipping away from an entire generation, and fast becoming a nightmare for those who already bought in. Number 3. Renters squeezed out. If you think owning a home is tough in today's Australia, try renting one. Across the country, renters are being squeezed harder than ever before, trapped between skyrocketing prices and a shrinking pool of available homes. In cities like Brisbane, Adelaide, and Perth, rents have jumped by over 30% in just 2 years, and vacancy rates are at historic lows, some suburbs reporting less than 1% availability. This means more people fighting over fewer homes, driving prices even higher. It's not uncommon now to see 20 or more applicants for a single rental, some offering months of rent in advance just to secure a place to live. Landlords, emboldened by demand, raise prices freely. Tenants, desperate to stay off the streets, are left with no choice but to pay. And it's not just singles or students struggling. Families with kids, full-time workers, and even professionals are being priced out. Many are being forced to relocate far from schools, work, and support networks. Some are couch surfing, living in cars, or turning to crisis accommodation, not because they're unemployed, but because renting has become unaffordable. The rental system is broken. There's no rent cap, no federal protection for tenants, and limited affordable housing being built. Add to that short-term rental platforms like Airbnb, which take long-term homes off the market, and you have a perfect storm that leaves renters crushed. Being a renter in Australia is no longer a stepping stone. It's a full-blown financial trap. And for millions, it's pushing them closer to homelessness, with nowhere left to go. Number 4. Housing shortage crisis. Australia doesn't just have a housing affordability problem, it has a housing shortage emergency. According to industry experts, we are short by at least 200,000 homes nationwide, and the gap is growing every year. The demand is skyrocketing, fueled by population growth, migration, and household formation, but the supply simply isn't keeping up. Why? A tangled mess of zoning restrictions, lengthy approval processes, construction delays, and lack of government coordination is choking the pipeline. In many areas, it can take years just to get building approval, let alone start construction. Developers are backing out due to high material and labour costs, while state and local governments argue over who should take responsibility. Meanwhile, first home buyers and renters are caught in the middle, left to battle over a shrinking number of available properties. It's not just about numbers, it's about where the homes are. Even when new housing is built, it's often in areas far from jobs, schools, and public transport, making it inaccessible for most Australians. Affordable housing projects remain underfunded, and social housing stock has barely grown in decades, despite rising homelessness and demand. And here's the kicker. Even if we start building today, it won't fix the crisis overnight. Housing construction takes time, and the damage is already done. This is a crisis that's been years in the making, and the cost of inaction is now being paid by everyday families. Without urgent action to build smarter, faster, and fairer, the shortage will turn from a crisis into a collapse. And when homes run out, stability does too. Number 5. Foreign investment and property speculation. It's one of the most controversial and emotionally charged parts of Australia's housing crisis: foreign investment and rampant property speculation. For years, wealthy buyers from overseas have been snapping up properties across major cities, often paying above-market prices in cash. While that may sound like good business, the reality on the ground is very different. Locals are being pushed out, priced out, and left behind. Many of these homes are left vacant, used as investment vehicles rather than places to live. In some high-end suburbs of Sydney and Melbourne, entire apartment towers sit in silence. No lights on, no families inside. It's not a housing market anymore. It's become a stock market for the ultra-rich. This demand drives prices up not just for the top tier, but for everyone down the ladder. But it's not just foreign buyers. Speculators and property flippers within Australia are also fanning the flames, buying multiple properties, sitting on them, and selling when the prices peak. With tax perks like negative gearing and capital gains discounts, the system rewards speculation over stability. Regular families trying to buy their first home? They're left competing with investors who treat housing like a game. The outcome? An increasingly unaffordable, unstable, and unfair housing system. Homes should be for people, not just for profit. Until the rules are rewritten, the average Aussie doesn't stand a chance in this rigged game. We put heart, time, and a whole lot of research into these videos. If you found value in this one, drop a comment below and tell us which reason hit you hardest. And don't forget to subscribe. It's just one click, but it means the world to us. Number 6. Climate risk and insurance collapse. What happens when your home becomes uninsurable? That's not a hypothetical question. It's a terrifying reality already unfolding across parts of Australia. From flood-prone Queensland towns to bushfire-ravaged areas of New South Wales, the threat isn't just natural disasters, it's what comes after. Insurance companies pulling out, premiums skyrocketing, and entire regions left exposed. In the last few years alone, Australia has seen record-breaking floods, fires, and storms, and insurers are sounding the alarm. In some communities, home insurance premiums have risen by over 300%, with some homeowners facing annual bills of $10,000 or more. Others are simply being denied coverage altogether, effectively stranding families in homes they can't sell, can't insure, and can't protect. This creates a dangerous domino effect. Without insurance, banks may refuse mortgages. Without mortgages, property values plummet. Communities collapse, not because of the disaster itself, but because of what comes next. It's a climate-triggered housing time bomb, ticking quietly in the background. And here's the worst part. Many Australians don't even know they're at risk. Climate modelling is complex, and disclosure laws are weak. You could buy a home today, only to find out next year that it's uninsurable, or worse, uninhabitable. This isn't just about weather, it's about survival. It's about a broken system where nature meets neglect and ordinary people pay the price. Climate risk isn't coming, it's already here. And it's reshaping the very map of where Australians can safely live. Number 7. Government policy gaps. Behind every crisis is a failure of leadership, and when it comes to housing, Australia's policy gaps are both glaring and growing. While everyday Australians scramble to keep a roof over their heads, governments at all levels seem to be stuck in a cycle of short-term fixes and political spin, with no long-term vision in sight. Despite the housing emergency being on full display, meaningful action has been limited. Federal and state governments have launched schemes like first home buyer grants and stamp duty concessions, but these often fuel demand without increasing supply, pushing prices even higher. Meanwhile, investment-friendly tax policies like negative gearing and capital gains discounts continue to benefit property investors over first-time buyers. Even worse, public and social housing has been neglected for decades. Australia now has one of the lowest rates of social housing in the developed world. Thousands sit on waiting lists, while governments sell off or underfund the few homes that remain. Promised solutions are too little, too late, and often get lost in election cycles and bureaucratic red tape. There's also a serious disconnect between levels of government. Local councils may block high-density developments due to community pressure, even when there's federal funding available. The result? Delays, missed opportunities, and a worsening crisis. This isn't just bad planning, it's systemic neglect. Without bold reforms and true collaboration across political lines, the housing crisis won't just continue, it'll spiral. And while politicians pass the blame, it's ordinary Australians who are paying the price, in stress, in sacrifice, and in shattered dreams. Number 8. Migration and population pressure. Australia has long been a welcoming nation, and migration has played a vital role in building our economy, culture, and workforce. But in recent years, record population growth has collided with a housing market already on the brink, creating intense pressure on both supply and affordability. In 2023 alone, Australia saw over 500,000 new arrivals, the highest net migration figure in history. That's equivalent to adding a city the size of Canberra in just 1 year. But while our population boomed, the number of new homes being built didn't even come close to keeping pace. The result? More people competing for fewer homes, driving up prices and rental demand almost overnight. It's not about blaming migrants. They're not the cause. They're part of the equation. The real issue is poor planning. Successive governments welcomed high migration levels without ensuring the infrastructure, housing, and urban development was ready to support it. Schools are overcrowded, transport systems are strained, and housing is scarce, especially in major cities where most newcomers settle. This mismatch has ripple effects. First home buyers are priced out, renters face bidding wars, and social cohesion starts to fray as communities feel the strain. Instead of coordinated, balanced growth, we're seeing chaos and congestion. Migration should be a national strength, but without smart policies, investment in infrastructure, and a housing strategy that matches our population ambitions, it quickly turns into pressure. And in today's climate, that pressure is being felt hardest in the one place people should feel safest: home. Number 9. Mortgage stress and defaults. What happens when you're working full-time, doing everything right, and still can't keep up with your mortgage? That's the harsh reality for millions of Australians currently facing mortgage stress. Defined as spending over 30% of household income on repayments, mortgage stress is no longer a fringe issue. It's fast becoming the new normal. Recent figures reveal that over 1 in 3 mortgage holders are now under significant financial strain, with thousands more just one rate hike or unexpected bill away from breaking point. With interest rates rising and wages stagnating, households are dipping into savings, maxing out credit cards, and delaying essentials just to stay afloat. But eventually, something has to give, and it is giving. Mortgage defaults and forced property sales are on the rise, particularly in outer suburban and regional areas, where many stretched themselves to buy during the housing boom. Families who once felt proud to own a home are now receiving letters from the bank, or worse, facing auction signs on their front lawns. What makes it worse is the emotional toll. The shame, stress, and anxiety of losing a home can tear families apart, affect mental health, and leave lasting scars. This isn't just about numbers. It's about real people, real dreams, crumbling under the weight of a system that set them up to fail. Mortgage stress is the silent killer of the Aussie dream. Without serious intervention, more and more families will be forced to make impossible choices. And for many, the next chapter may begin not with a key in hand, but with an eviction notice. Number 10. Lack of long-term urban planning. Australia's housing crisis didn't appear overnight. It's the result of decades of poor planning, short-term thinking, and political inaction. While our cities grew taller and suburbs sprawled wider, the critical question was ignored. Are we building for the future or just reacting to the present? Too often, urban development has been driven by profit, not purpose. High-rise apartments built without nearby schools, hospitals, or public transport. Suburban estates with no jobs, parks, or reliable infrastructure. The result? Commuter chaos, disconnected communities, and families isolated in housing deserts, far from the services they need to thrive. Planning decisions are frequently made in silos. Local councils, state governments, and federal agencies working without coordination or a shared vision. What's missing is a national housing and urban plan that looks beyond the next election, a plan that prioritizes affordability, sustainability, and livability, not just developer margins. Imagine if we built communities that grew with people, where housing, transport, schools, and jobs were planned together, not patched on after the fact. Instead, we've built a maze of mismatched zoning laws, delayed approvals, and inconsistent policies. When governments treat housing like a crisis only when headlines flare, we end up chasing problems rather than preventing them. Without long-term vision, we're not just building homes, we're building future failures. If we don't shift now towards smarter urban planning, the housing crisis will become a permanent feature of Australian life. And for the next generation, the dream of home won't just be delayed, it may be dead on arrival. What we're facing isn't just a housing affordability issue, it's a national unravelling of stability, security, and the Australian dream itself. From interest rate hikes and stagnant wages to unchecked speculation and climate threats, each of these 10 reasons paints a chilling picture. But together, they form a crisis that's bigger than numbers. It's about people, families, futures. We must stop treating housing as a commodity and start treating it as a human right. Because when people lose their homes, they don't just lose a place to sleep, they lose safety, dignity, and hope. If we don't act boldly and urgently, millions more will slip through the cracks. But here's the truth: awareness is power. And by watching this far, you've already taken the first step. Now it's time to push the conversation forward. Talk about this. Share this. Demand better from leaders. And if you or someone you know is being impacted, you're not alone. Australia is at a turning point, and what we do next will decide whether we rebuild a fairer future or watch the dream disappear entirely. Did you know the Australian government can now freeze your bank account without warning? That's right. Over 700 new laws and regulations have been passed in the last decade, and many of them quietly, behind closed doors, all in the name of national security and financial stability. But here's the twist: your money, your savings, your crypto, even your cash may no longer be fully yours. In fact, cash is slowly being phased out. Digital surveillance is tightening, and ordinary Aussies are being watched more closely than ever before. Is this protection or control? Are we stepping into a safer financial system or a soft surveillance state disguised in economic language? Stay with me, because in this video, I'll reveal 10 shocking ways these new Australian laws are targeting your money. Some will surprise you. Others may leave you questioning your entire financial setup. Let's dive in. Explosion. Number 1. Digital currency push. In recent years, the Australian government has been accelerating its move toward a central bank digital currency, CBDC, a form of money that's fully digital, fully trackable, and fully controlled. On the surface, it sounds convenient. No more paper cash, faster transactions, fewer fees. But here's the dark side. When money becomes purely digital and centrally managed, every transaction you make can be monitored, recorded, and even denied. This isn't some conspiracy theory. It's already being tested by the Reserve Bank of Australia under the name EAUD. Quiet trials are being run across banks and institutions, and most people don't even know it's happening. Now, imagine a world where you can't pay your tradie in cash, where every coffee you buy, every gift you give, or donation you make is automatically logged in a government-accessible ledger. The idea of financial freedom? It slowly disappears. If your account ever gets flagged, whether by mistake or for a minor infraction, you could be locked out of your money instantly. No court, no phone call, no delay. Just a frozen screen when you try to pay for groceries. Think it can't happen? It's already happening in countries like China. So, why should this concern you? Because once physical cash disappears, you lose control. Your spending habits become data points, your lifestyle becomes a profile, and privacy, something we used to take for granted, becomes a luxury. This isn't fear-mongering. It's a real shift happening quietly, And the sooner you understand it, the better prepared you'll be. Digital money might be the future, but who controls that future is what matters most. Number 2. Cash restrictions and bans. In 2020, the Australian government attempted to introduce a law that would make cash transactions over $10,000 illegal. The bill was eventually scrapped after public backlash, but the message was loud and clear. Cash is under attack. While that particular law didn't pass, it exposed a deeper intention, one that's still quietly moving forward behind policy doors. More retailers are going cashless, ATMs are disappearing across suburbs, and some banks have already introduced daily withdrawal limits. Slowly but surely, your ability to access and use physical cash is being squeezed. But here's the real issue. When cash is gone, so is your ability to transact anonymously. Want to lend money to a friend, pay for a used item, or tip someone for good service? You'll be forced to go digital. That means everything, every single payment, is trackable. There's no room for off-grid generosity, emergency trades, or simple privacy. You might think, I have nothing to hide, but that's not the point. Privacy isn't about hiding, it's about having a choice. The more we rely solely on digital systems, the more control financial institutions and governments have. They can freeze, flag, or question your transactions without warning. And if laws tighten further in the future, even holding large amounts of cash could become suspicious. What was once normal, keeping savings in your drawer or paying your gardener in notes, may one day be seen as criminal. It's not just about money, it's about freedom, autonomy, and whether you can still operate outside a controlled system. Number 3. Frozen accounts under emergency laws. Imagine waking up one morning, trying to pay for groceries, and your card is declined. You check your bank app, your account is frozen. No warning, no explanation, just a digital lock on your own money. This scenario isn't fiction. Thanks to expanding emergency powers in Australia, it's a very real possibility. Under certain national security or emergency declarations, the government now has the legal authority to freeze individual bank accounts, not just of criminals or suspects, but even those simply caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. We saw hints of this during the Canadian trucker protests, where peaceful demonstrators and even those who simply donated money found their financial access restricted. Australia has similar frameworks in place, laws that can be activated in moments of crisis. And the definition of a crisis? That's up to the authorities. Whether it's a protest, a financial panic, or a cyber threat, your funds could be locked as a precaution. What makes this more chilling is how easy it is to justify. It's for national security. It's to prevent misuse. But once that switch is flipped, you don't get a say. Your access to rent, food, healthcare, gone with a keystroke. In a world moving toward full digital finance, this level of control should raise alarms. Because if your money can be frozen without due process, do you really own it? Or are you just borrowing it from the system? Number 4. Surveillance of large transactions. Most Australians don't realise that every transaction over $10,000 is automatically reported to AUSTRAC, the government agency tasked with tracking money laundering and terrorism financing. That's not new, but what is new is how the net is tightening. It's no longer just about big, obvious transfers. Frequent small transactions, irregular spending patterns, or transfers between personal accounts can now trigger red flags. Welcome to the era of algorithmic financial surveillance. Today, your bank is no longer just a service provider, it's a data watchdog. AI systems silently monitor for anything deemed suspicious, even if it's completely legal. You moved $2,000 3 times last month. You might get a call. Sent money to a friend overseas? Your transaction could be logged. There doesn't have to be a crime, just unusual activity. The scariest part. You won't know you're being watched until you're flagged. And what happens then? You may be asked to explain yourself. Your funds could be held. Or, in extreme cases, your account temporarily frozen. It's all done under the banner of safety, of course. But when every move you make is tracked, privacy becomes a myth. For many Australians, these changes are invisible until they aren't. Until they hit a limit, or get that strange email from their bank, or have a transaction reversed without explanation. The question is simple. Is the surveillance actually protecting you or controlling you? Because when ordinary people are treated like suspects, we're no longer free. We're monitored. Number 5. Crackdown on crypto. For years, cryptocurrency was seen as a digital escape, a way to store and move value outside the grip of governments and traditional banks. But that freedom is now under fire. In Australia, regulatory bodies are moving swiftly to tighten their control over crypto assets, exchanges, and even wallets. They say it's about stopping fraud and protecting investors, but what's really happening is a slow, calculated attempt to regulate crypto out of independence. Major crypto exchanges are now being forced to register with the government, comply with strict KYC rules, and report suspicious transactions just like banks. That means every time you buy, sell, or transfer crypto, you're being watched. And it doesn't stop there. Authorities are already pushing for new rules that could allow freezing of digital wallets, restrictions on peer-to-peer transfers, and even taxes on unrealized gains. Yes, you could be taxed on money you haven't even withdrawn. And while this may seem distant or technical, it affects anyone who believes in financial freedom and ownership. Crypto was supposed to give power back to the individual. But now, with centralized exchanges cooperating with regulators, your assets are no longer as free or private as you think. If they're in the system, they're visible. And if they're visible, they can be restricted. If you're in crypto, don't wait until your access is limited or your funds are frozen. The window for decentralized freedom is narrowing fast, and many won't realize until it's already closed. Number 6. ATO's real-time tracking. Once upon a time, dealing with the Australian Tax Office meant waiting for letters, forms, and once-a-year assessments. Not anymore. The ATO has entered the digital age with full force, and it's watching in real time. Today, thanks to sweeping data sharing agreements, the ATO is connected to your bank, your super fund, your employer, and even your crypto exchanges. That means they don't just know what you earned. They know what you spent, saved, and traded, often before you do. Let's say you buy a new car, book an overseas trip, or invest in crypto. The ATO already knows. They can cross-check your spending habits against your declared income in seconds. If something doesn't add up, you could be flagged for an audit automatically. No human needed. The system is designed to find anomalies, and in some cases, even small inconsistencies can trigger serious scrutiny. This level of oversight might seem efficient, but it also raises serious concerns. When every detail of your financial life is monitored, without your consent or knowledge, the line between regulation and intrusion becomes dangerously thin. It's no longer about catching tax cheats. It's about total transparency, from you to the state. And once the system suspects you, you may find yourself trying to prove your innocence to a machine. The takeaway? Tax transparency isn't optional anymore. It's automatic. So make sure your financial habits match your records, because the ATO isn't coming. It's already here. Number 7. Limited withdrawal rights. It's your money. You earned it, saved it, and deposited it. But what if I told you that you may not be allowed to withdraw it when you want, or how much you want? That's the growing reality in Australia. More and more banks are quietly limiting daily cash withdrawals, capping ATM access, and even asking for justification when customers request large sums. It's no longer about convenience, it's about control. People are reporting situations where withdrawing more than $5,000 means delays, paperwork, or even outright denial. Some branches don't carry enough cash on site anymore. You're told to order your own money days in advance. And in certain cases, customers are asked, "What do you need it for?" a question that should never be necessary when it's your own funds. Slowly, cash is being treated like a suspicious request rather than a basic right. The worst part? Most Australians aren't even aware this is happening until it's too late. Until they need quick access to cash during an emergency and suddenly find themselves trapped in a system with invisible walls. The infrastructure is being built to make physical money obsolete, and once it's gone, there's no going back. So if you've always thought, I can just go to the bank if I ever need it, think again. The rules are changing, and the system isn't designed with your freedom in mind. Start preparing now, because in a crisis, the ability to access your own cash could be the one freedom you'll wish you'd never taken for granted. Number 8. Penalties for cash deals. Paying with cash used to be normal. It was fast, private, and widely accepted. But now, in many parts of Australia, using cash is slowly being painted as suspicious, and in some cases, even punishable. Government policies are making it clear. They don't just prefer digital, they want to eliminate cash altogether. And if you continue to use it for certain transactions, you could be hit with serious fines or penalties. There have already been proposed laws that would make it illegal to pay or receive more than $10,000 in cash for goods or services, even between private individuals. While public resistance delayed those changes, the idea hasn't gone away. Authorities argue it's about cracking down on black market activity and tax evasion. But here's the problem. Innocent people are being caught in the net. A tradie doing home repairs, a family selling a car privately, or someone helping a relative in need, all potentially at risk if they go over the limit. This creates a chilling effect. People start second-guessing everyday, honest transactions. Businesses feel pressured to stop accepting cash altogether, fearing audits or legal trouble. And slowly, a society built on choice becomes one built on surveillance and compliance. The more these rules expand, the less room you have to transact freely and privately. So ask yourself, when the government can fine you for using legal tender in legal ways, is it really about safety or is it about power? Because once cash is penalized, true financial freedom becomes a fading memory. Number 9. Expanded definitions of suspicious activity. Once upon a time, suspicious activity meant something obvious: money laundering, fraud, terrorism financing. But today, that definition is expanding. In Australia, what qualifies as suspicious is increasingly broad, vague, and alarmingly subjective. A large cash deposit, a donation to a controversial cause, even moving your own money between personal accounts too frequently. All of it can trigger automatic flags without any criminal intent. What's even more concerning is that banks are now expected to act not just as financial institutions, but as watchdogs for government agencies. They're required to report transactions that seem unusual, but no clear explanation is given for what unusual actually means. That means your normal behavior could be flagged simply because it doesn't fit a pattern, or because it matches a trend being monitored by artificial intelligence. And once flagged, you're in a system, your activity tracked, logged, and possibly investigated. This kind of scrutiny creates fear and uncertainty. People stop asking questions. They avoid supporting causes. They even limit their own financial movements, not because they've done anything wrong, but because they don't want to be noticed. It's a form of silent pressure that nudges everyone into compliance. The truth is, in a system where suspicious is never clearly defined, everyone becomes a potential target. When everyday choices, like moving your savings or giving to charity, are quietly monitored and judged, it's no longer about crime prevention. It's about shaping behaviour through invisible rules. And that should concern every Australian who values freedom. Number 10. Corporate and government data sharing. When you tap your card at the store, sign up for a rewards program, or check your balance online, you probably don't think twice. But behind every click, every swipe, every transaction is a growing network of data collection, and most of it doesn't stay private. In Australia, banks, corporations, and government agencies are now sharing more data than ever before. And most people have no idea just how far it goes. Your loyalty cards? They track what you buy. Your bank? It logs how often, where, and with whom. Insurance companies, telecom providers, credit agencies, they all gather and store details about your life. And under current laws, much of this information can be shared with government departments without your knowledge or consent. The line between private company and public authority is becoming dangerously blurred. What's worse is that this data isn't just sitting on a file. It's being analyzed. Algorithms are being trained to predict your behavior, flag your habits, and even assess your risk profile. Imagine being denied a loan, flagged for an audit, or put on a government watch list, not because of what you did, but because your data profile suggested you might someday. That's not financial planning. That's social control. We used to worry about privacy on social media, but this is bigger. This is your entire financial life being turned into a product, traded between entities you'll never meet. The future of money isn't just digital. It's transparent, tracked, and quietly judged. And that's the final warning. The more data you give, the less freedom you keep. So, what does all of this mean? It means we're not just witnessing a financial shift. We're living through a silent revolution in how money is controlled, accessed, and monitored in Australia. From digital currencies and frozen accounts to expanding surveillance and disappearing cash, the freedom we once took for granted is being replaced by systems of control hidden behind screens and policies. These laws weren't shouted from rooftops. They came quietly, tucked into reforms, hidden in fine print, wrapped in words like security and efficiency. But now you know, and awareness is power. You still have time to prepare, to diversify, to protect your assets, to ask hard questions. Because in the end, the issue isn't just about dollars and cents. It's about freedom, privacy, and the right to manage your life without permission from a digital gatekeeper. If this video opened your eyes, give it a like, hit subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear this. Drop a comment below. How do you feel about these changes? Are we safer or more controlled? Stay alert, stay informed, and above all, stay free. Did you know that over 35,000 Australians left major cities in the past year alone? And the number is climbing fast? Rising crime, unaffordable rents, and extreme weather are just the beginning. Once thriving cities are becoming unlivable. And if you're living in one of them, 2026 might be too late to escape the impact. Shocking? It should be. Imagine waking up one day and realizing your dream city is turning against you. Your rent's doubled, the jobs are gone, and the once calm beach town is now at constant risk of flooding. Sounds like a nightmare? For thousands, it's already real. And yet, many still don't see what's coming next. In this countdown, we're revealing the 10 Australian cities you must consider leaving before 2026. Some may surprise you, others will shock you. But one thing is certain, you won't look at these cities the same way again. Number 10. Hobart. At first glance, Hobart looks like a peaceful escape, stunning waterfront views, historic charm, and a slower pace of life. But behind the postcard-perfect facade, this Tasmanian capital is facing a quiet crisis that's pushing locals out and keeping newcomers on edge. Over the last 5 years, Hobart's housing prices have skyrocketed by more than 60%, making it the least affordable city in Australia relative to income. Yes, even beating out Sydney in that category. For many residents, the dream of owning a home or even renting comfortably has turned into a daily financial struggle. Wages haven't kept pace, and young professionals are fleeing in search of stability. And it's not just the housing. Hobart's economy heavily leans on a few sectors like tourism, healthcare, and education. But during off-peak seasons or downturns, job opportunities become scarce. If you're in tech, media, or even just looking for diverse employment options, you'll likely feel trapped. Add to that the increasing strain on infrastructure, and Hobart's peaceful image begins to crack. Roads are outdated, public transport is limited, and even basic internet connectivity can be patchy in many suburbs. A serious concern for remote workers and digital professionals. It's the kind of city you fall in love with on vacation and struggle to survive in long term. Unless you're financially secure or retired, Hobart may no longer be the hidden gem it once was, but rather a beautiful trap with fewer ways out. Number 9. Darwin. Darwin might seem like a tropical dream. Sun-drenched coastlines, laid-back lifestyle, and a strong sense of community. But beneath the sunshine, life in the top end is getting tougher by the day. What was once marketed as a land of opportunity is now facing an exodus, especially among young workers and families. Let's start with the climate extremes. Darwin doesn't just get hot. It gets oppressively hot and humid, with average wet season temperatures soaring past 35 degrees Celsius and humidity levels reaching over 80%. That's not just uncomfortable, it's exhausting and unhealthy, especially for children and the elderly. Add in rising sea levels and more frequent extreme weather events, and it's clear. Darwin is on the climate front lines. Economically, Darwin's job market is unstable at best. While government and defense jobs offer some security, the private sector remains narrow and volatile. Tourism took a major hit during global downturns, and many small businesses never bounced back. Skilled workers are finding it harder to secure stable, long-term employment. And when they do, the pay often doesn't match the cost of living. Speaking of costs, Darwin ranks among the most expensive cities in Australia for groceries, utilities, and basic services. Combine that with isolation from the rest of the country, and everyday life starts to feel restricted and overpriced. Many residents report feeling cut off, not just geographically, but economically and socially. Darwin still has its charm, but as the pressure mounts, more people are quietly packing up and heading south before the heat becomes unbearable, literally and financially. Number 8. Adelaide. Adelaide has long been praised for its festivals, food scene, and relaxed lifestyle. It's often marketed as an underrated gem, affordable, peaceful, and family-friendly. But if you look a little closer, you'll see a city that's quietly slipping into stagnation, especially for younger generations trying to build a future. The biggest red flag? A sluggish economy. While other capitals are evolving into innovation hubs, Adelaide has struggled to diversify beyond its traditional industries. Manufacturing jobs have disappeared, and while there's talk of tech growth, the reality on the ground feels slow and limited. For many graduates and professionals, Adelaide offers fewer career paths and limited upward mobility. It's no surprise that many leave for Sydney or Melbourne shortly after finishing their studies. Unemployment among youth in Adelaide remains consistently above the national average. And with a rapidly aging population, the city is becoming less dynamic, less innovative, and increasingly reliant on health and aged care services to keep the wheels turning. Housing is still relatively affordable for now, but demand is creeping up as interstate buyers see it as a cheaper option, slowly pushing prices beyond what locals can comfortably manage. And the pace of infrastructure development hasn't kept up. Public transport remains underwhelming, and digital infrastructure lags behind larger cities, making it a tough choice for remote workers and tech professionals. Adelaide isn't falling apart, it's falling behind. And that quiet, creeping decline is often harder to notice until you're stuck in it. For anyone with big ambitions, this charming city might just become a frustrating cage. Number 7. Gold Coast. To millions of tourists, the Gold Coast is a dream destination. Golden beaches, glitzy high-rises, and surf-friendly waves. But behind the shimmering skyline lies a city at risk, grappling with issues that could make living here a costly mistake by 2026. Let's start with the climate. Gold Coast is increasingly exposed to rising sea levels, coastal erosion, and extreme weather events. In fact, scientists have warned that entire suburbs could be at risk of frequent flooding within the next decade. Insurance premiums are already soaring, and for many homeowners, policies are becoming unaffordable or unavailable altogether. Owning property here may soon be more liability than luxury. Then there's the housing crisis. Rents have surged nearly 40% since 2020, and property prices are no longer coastal affordable. Locals are being priced out, with long-time residents competing against short-term investors and Airbnb operators. The city's popularity is becoming its downfall. Tourism is thriving, but locals are struggling to stay. Job opportunities outside of hospitality and tourism are limited. If you're not in those sectors or working remotely with a good salary, finding fulfilling, stable work can be an uphill battle. And with traffic congestion growing and public transport lagging behind population growth, everyday commuting can be frustrating. The Gold Coast may still glitter from afar, but for many who live there, the shine is fading. As one local put it, it's paradise for visitors, but survival for residents. If you're thinking long-term, this coastal dream might not be worth the rising risks. Number 6. Launceston. Launceston might charm you at first glance. Rolling green hills, historic buildings, and that slower, peaceful rhythm of life. But dig a little deeper, and you'll discover why more residents are reconsidering their future in this quaint Tasmanian town. What feels like a well-kept secret today may become an unlivable backwater tomorrow. One of Launceston's biggest challenges is infrastructure, or lack of it. Despite its growing population, the city still struggles with patchy internet, limited public transport, and outdated roads. For digital nomads, creatives, or anyone who relies on tech to work remotely, this town can feel like it's stuck in the 1990s. A simple video call? Not guaranteed. Healthcare services are also under growing pressure. With a rise in retirees moving in and an aging local population, medical facilities are becoming overstretched, and wait times for critical services are increasing. This poses a serious issue for families and the elderly alike. Economically, Launceston offers limited job diversity. Apart from hospitality, agriculture, and local government, the options are slim. High-skilled professionals often find themselves underemployed or forced to commute long distances or even relocate. While housing is still more affordable than mainland cities, that advantage is shrinking fast as mainland buyers flood in, inflating prices and squeezing out locals. In short, Launceston is beautiful, but brittle. If you're looking to build a future with career growth, tech accessibility, and reliable services, it may not hold up. For many, the dream of Tasmanian peace is clashing with a harsh and isolating reality. Number 5. Newcastle. Once a proud industrial powerhouse, Newcastle has transformed into a trendy coastal city with modern cafes, sleek apartments, and oceanfront living. But that transformation has come at a steep cost, and residents are starting to feel it. What was once an affordable alternative to Sydney is now choking on its own growth. Over the past few years, property prices in Newcastle have surged by more than 60%, and rents aren't far behind. What's driving this? A flood of Sydney-based buyers and investors looking for cheaper property, turning Newcastle into a real estate gold rush. But while prices climb, wages in the region remain relatively stagnant, leading to an uncomfortable truth. Locals are being priced out of their own city. The job market hasn't diversified as quickly as the skyline. Many residents still rely on a narrow range of industries, including healthcare, education, and trades. For young professionals, creatives, and tech workers, the city offers limited upward mobility and few high-growth sectors. Remote work? Better have your own setup, because public infrastructure hasn't caught up with demand. Public transport is often unreliable, congestion is growing, and development projects frequently outpace planning. Locals report feeling like Newcastle is becoming Sydney light, without the perks. Newcastle's charm is fading under the weight of gentrification and cost of living pressures. Unless you're arriving with cash in hand, you might find yourself wondering if you're building a life, or just surviving in someone else's investment portfolio. We put a lot of heart into researching and creating this for you. Now it's your turn. Drop a comment below with the city you'd leave first and why. We read every one. And hey, hitting subscribe takes 1 second, but it means the world to us. Om. Number 4. Townsville. Nestled along Queensland's northeast coast, Townsville offers sunshine, beaches, and access to the Great Barrier Reef. But beneath that postcard-perfect setting lies a city increasingly battered by financial strain and environmental threats. And for many residents, the cost of staying is becoming too high. Townsville is in a high-risk cyclone zone, and the impacts are becoming harder to ignore. In just the past few years, the region has experienced flooding disasters that damaged thousands of homes and forced mass evacuations. And while natural disasters are part of life in northern Queensland, what's changed is the skyrocketing cost of insurance. Home insurance in Townsville can now be 2 to 3 times higher than in southern cities, if you can even get coverage at all. These extreme weather events are taking a toll on infrastructure too. Roads, drainage, and public facilities are constantly under pressure, and rebuilding efforts often lag behind. That instability has led many families and retirees to quietly move south, where they feel their investment and their safety are more secure. Economically, Townsville struggles with high unemployment and limited job opportunities outside the public sector. The city has tried to position itself as a defense and education hub, but many skilled workers still leave due to a lack of private sector growth and long-term prospects. Townsville has beauty, but also brutal risks, both environmental and economic. As one resident said, "It's like living on a timer. You never know when the next big hit will come." For those looking to plant roots, Townsville may not offer the stability or security they need. Number 3. Canberra. Canberra, Australia's capital city, is often seen as clean, organised, and politically powerful. With wide roads, low crime rates, and high average incomes, it sounds like the perfect place to settle down. But beneath this polished image lies a city facing a slow-burning identity crisis, and more residents are starting to feel it. For one, Canberra is overwhelmingly dependent on government jobs. Over 40% of the workforce is directly or indirectly linked to the public sector. While this offers short-term security, it also creates a dangerous lack of economic diversity. When hiring freezes hit or departments downsize, entire families feel the impact. And if you're not in the policy or defense space, finding meaningful, high-paying work can be tough. Then there's the cost of living. Canberra now rivals Sydney and Melbourne in terms of housing affordability pressures. Rents have surged in recent years, and property prices continue to climb, pricing out young professionals and first home buyers. Despite its image as a planned city, growth hasn't been matched with affordability. Culturally, some residents report feeling isolated or creatively stifled. Canberra's quiet charm often becomes monotony, especially for younger generations seeking vibrant, dynamic experiences. And while the city has grown, public transport remains limited, especially outside of inner districts. Canberra may be safe and predictable, but for many, it's also becoming rigid and restrictive. If you're not building a government career or sitting on real estate, the capital can quickly feel like a cul-de-sac for ambition. Wide roads, but nowhere to go. Number 2. Perth. Perth, the sun-soaked capital of Western Australia, is often praised for its beaches, space, and laid-back vibe. But for all its natural beauty, Perth is a city grappling with geographic isolation and an economy tied to boom or bust cycles. And that combo is making it harder for many to stick around. Let's start with the distance. Perth is often called the most isolated major city on Earth. And it's not just a fun fact. That isolation translates into higher prices, slower supply chains, and fewer opportunities across industries. Flights to and from other cities are expensive, and for businesses and professionals who rely on national connectivity, it can feel like being cut off from the rest of the country. Then there's the economic roller coaster. Perth's economy is heavily reliant on the mining and resource sector. During booms, jobs flood in and wages skyrocket. But when global demand dips, the economy shrinks rapidly, leaving thousands unemployed almost overnight. It's a cycle that has left many families chasing short-term contracts and constantly relocating just to stay afloat. For those in creative industries, media, or tech, job markets are limited. Many young professionals end up leaving for Melbourne or Sydney, seeking broader horizons and more diverse opportunities. Housing prices have climbed again in recent years, and while still cheaper than Sydney, the rise is putting pressure on new buyers. Public transport remains limited, and sprawl adds to long commute times. Perth offers peace and sunshine, but it comes at the cost of career growth, stability, and connection. For many, it's a city that feels more like a pause than a path forward. Number 1. Sydney. Sydney, Australia's crown jewel. A global city with iconic views, world-class beaches, and endless opportunity. Or so it seems. But behind the glossy skyline and opera house selfies, Sydney is in crisis, and thousands are already on their way out. If you're thinking long-term, it might be time to ask, is Sydney still livable? Let's talk about the elephant in the room, cost of living. Sydney has one of the most unaffordable housing markets in the world. The median house price has soared past $1.5 million, and rent increases have outpaced wage growth for years. For many young Australians, the dream of home ownership here is just that, a dream. Even dual-income families are feeling the squeeze. But it's not just about housing. Everyday essentials, groceries, childcare, transportation are all more expensive in Sydney than in most other Australian cities. Congestion is a daily battle. Public transport is overcrowded, and commute times continue to rise. Add to that a growing sense of burnout. Sydney's intense pace, competitive job market, and lack of affordable living is eroding quality of life. Mental health professionals are seeing spikes in urban anxiety, while families are increasingly moving to regional towns in search of peace, space, and financial relief. Ironically, Sydney, once seen as the pinnacle of success, is now a symbol of survival. It still sparkles, yes. But many are realizing that living in Sydney means sacrificing too much. As one lifelong resident said, "I used to work hard to live here. Now I work to escape." Australia is changing, fast. The cities we once called safe, affordable, and full of opportunity are now facing serious challenges. From climate threats and economic instability to rising living costs and housing crises, these aren't just future problems. They're happening right now. And the people living in these cities are feeling the pressure every day. Whether it's the hidden struggles of Hobart, the extreme weather in Townsville, or the crushing cost of life in Sydney, one thing is clear: staying informed is no longer optional. It's survival. Knowing when to leave or when to rethink your next move could be the difference between thriving and just trying to keep your head above water. But this isn't about fear. It's about awareness and action. If your city made this list, don't panic. Use this as a wake-up call to reevaluate your priorities, your finances, and your long-term plans. And if you made it this far, you're already ahead of the game. Yay! Is Australia, one of the world's safest, wealthiest countries, silently heading for collapse? It might sound impossible, but recent events are painting a far more troubling picture. From record-breaking bushfires that turned skies blood red, to entire towns running out of drinking water, Australia is facing crises that once felt unthinkable. And it's not just nature causing chaos. The economy, politics, and even its place in global power dynamics are all under pressure. What if I told you that some experts believe Australia could become unlivable in parts within our lifetime? That coastal homes could vanish, critical trade routes could break, and trust in government is already crumbling. The warning signs are not just coming, they're here, and they're getting louder. But most people are either ignoring them or just don't know what's really going on. In this video, we're going to explore 10 shocking reasons why some believe Australia is on the edge of a major turning point, and why the rest of the world should be paying close attention. Number 1. Climate catastrophe. Australia isn't just feeling climate change, it's being pummeled by it. In the last decade alone, the country has seen some of the worst natural disasters in modern history. The Black Summer bushfires of 2019 to 2020 scorched over 24 million hectares, killing or displacing an estimated 3 billion animals. Skies turned orange, cities choked on smoke, and thousands were forced to flee their homes. Scientists called it apocalyptic, and it was just the beginning. Extreme heat waves, record-breaking droughts, and unstoppable floods are now regular events, not rare exceptions. In fact, some regions are seeing temperatures rise twice as fast as the global average. Water reservoirs are drying up. Farms are failing. Rural communities are being pushed to the edge. Many simply cannot survive another lost season. And when food supply tightens, cities feel the impact too, with rising prices and shortages. The most chilling part? Australia's unique geography makes it one of the most vulnerable countries in the world to climate shifts. Despite all the warnings, meaningful action remains slow. Fossil fuels still dominate energy policy, and as the planet warms, the question is no longer if things will get worse, but how fast. Will parts of Australia become uninhabitable in our lifetime? Will millions be forced to migrate inland, away from flooding coastlines and fire-prone forests? This isn't a future problem. It's already happening, right now. And if Australia can't adapt in time, the climate catastrophe might be the first domino to fall in a larger national unraveling. Number 2. Rising sea levels. Imagine waking up one morning to find your backyard swallowed by the ocean. Sounds dramatic? For thousands of Australians, it's already happening. Sea levels around Australia have risen by up to 25 centimetres in the past century, and the pace is only accelerating. Coastal erosion is now a national crisis, and some beachfront properties that were once prime real estate are becoming worthless. More than 85% of Australians live near the coast. That includes global hubs like Sydney, Melbourne, and Brisbane. Rising seas mean more coastal flooding, more storm surges, and ultimately the slow disappearance of neighbourhoods people have called home for generations. Roads are crumbling, beaches are vanishing, and seawalls are no longer enough. Insurance companies are already pulling out of high-risk areas, declaring them uninsurable, leaving families financially stranded. And it's not just about homes. Vital infrastructure, ports, airports, sewage systems, and power plants are all located dangerously close to sea level. As the water rises, the threat of system-wide failures becomes very real. Experts warn that without drastic intervention, tens of billions of dollars in property and infrastructure could be lost within decades. What's terrifying is how silent this crisis feels. There's no sudden explosion, no breaking news alert, just a steady, unstoppable creep of water that will change the map of Australia forever. If major cities lose their coastlines, where will everyone go? And how will the economy cope with the sudden displacement of millions? This isn't science fiction. It's Australia's coastal reality, and it's coming faster than most people think. Number 3. Isolation in Asia-Pacific politics. Once seen as a quiet power in the region, Australia is now walking a diplomatic tightrope, and the rope is fraying fast. Surrounded by rising giants like China and regional allies like Indonesia, India, and the United States, Australia is feeling increasingly isolated in a complex and shifting geopolitical landscape. For decades, Australia relied on its alliances to protect its place in global affairs. But those alliances are being tested. Relations with China, Australia's largest trading partner, have soured dramatically in recent years. Tariffs, trade blocs, and hostile rhetoric have replaced decades of cooperation. Meanwhile, Australia has doubled down on military ties with the US and the UK through the AUKUS Pact, which promises nuclear-powered submarines and defence collaboration. But at what cost? Neighbouring countries are watching closely, and not all are pleased. Critics argue that Australia's approach is too Western-focused, creating tensions with Asia-Pacific neighbours who see this as a threat to regional stability. If Australia is seen as choosing sides in a potential US-China conflict, it could be cut off, diplomatically and economically, from parts of the very region it depends on for survival. The real danger? Being caught in the crossfire. If global tensions rise, Australia may find itself trapped between two superpowers, with little control over the outcome. In a region that's becoming more unpredictable by the day, isolation isn't just lonely, it's dangerous. Is Australia prepared for a future where it has fewer friends and more enemies at its doorstep? Number 4. Economic dependence on China. Australia's economy might look strong on paper, but underneath lies a risky overdependence on one powerful customer, China. Over 35% of Australia's total exports go to China, including critical commodities like iron ore, coal, and natural gas. In short, Australia makes billions selling the materials that build modern China. But what happens when your biggest buyer suddenly stops buying? That's not just a what if. It's already started. In recent years, diplomatic spats over human rights, COVID-19 origins, and foreign interference have led China to slash imports of key Australian goods like wine, barley, and lobster. These weren't small penalties. They caused massive financial losses and panic in local industries. Imagine your paycheck being cut in half overnight because one customer walked out. The uncomfortable truth is that Australia has put too many economic eggs in one basket. While diversification is being discussed, progress is slow. Meanwhile, other countries like Vietnam, Indonesia, and India are rising as China's alternative suppliers. Australia risks being replaced if relations deteriorate further. This dependency is more than economic. It's a political vulnerability. If tensions escalate, China could weaponize trade, pushing Australia into a corner. Without strong backup plans, even a short disruption could trigger job losses, inflation, and economic instability. In a world where geopolitics and economics are now tightly linked, relying so heavily on one trading partner is like standing on a cliff with crumbling ground. One sharp move and everything could fall. Is it already too late for Australia to rebuild a safer, more balanced economy? Number 5. Energy crisis. Australia, a country blessed with sunshine, wind, and natural resources, is still facing an energy crisis. And it's not just about blackouts. The nation has long relied on coal and gas, both for domestic use and as major export earners. But as the world races toward clean energy, Australia risks being left behind, clinging to an outdated system that's both polluting and unstable. Aging coal plants are shutting down faster than they're being replaced. Meanwhile, the transition to renewables is stalling due to political infighting, lack of infrastructure, and investment delays. The result? soaring electricity prices, increasing power outages, and communities struggling to keep the lights on. In some regions, people are paying up to 40% more for electricity than they did just a few years ago. What's worse, Australia is losing its global energy edge. While countries like Germany and China invest billions into solar, wind, and battery technology, Australia hesitates, despite having some of the best natural conditions on Earth. This indecision could cost the country not just energy independence, but also economic growth and innovation. Imagine a future where families must ration energy, where power grids fail under heat waves, and where industries move offshore for better deals. That future is approaching fast, unless bold changes are made now. Will Australia lead the clean energy revolution, or be one of its casualties? We pour our heart and soul into every video to bring you stories that matter. So if this made you think, drop a comment below and share your thoughts. And hey, subscribing is just one click, but it means the world to us. Number 6. Brain drain. What happens when your best and brightest minds pack their bags and leave? That's the crisis quietly brewing in Australia. A growing brain drain that's robbing the country of its future. Top scientists, engineers, medical professionals, and creative talent are leaving for better opportunities abroad, especially in the United States, Europe, and Asia. Why? The answer is both simple and troubling. Stagnant wages, sky-high living costs, limited job growth in high-tech sectors, and a lack of investment in innovation are pushing young Australians to seek greener pastures. Even the education sector, once a global magnet, is losing ground. Students are finishing degrees only to find no career paths, while foreign tech giants recruit talent directly from Australian universities. This isn't just about individual dreams, it's about national potential. When brilliant minds leave, Australia loses innovation, economic growth, and global competitiveness. It becomes harder to build advanced industries or solve critical challenges like clean energy, AI, or medicine. Instead, the country becomes more dependent on importing ideas and solutions from overseas. The long-term effect? A hollowed-out economy where creativity and expertise are in short supply. Industries suffer, progress slows, and the very people who could lead Australia forward are building the future somewhere else. Can Australia reverse the trend and inspire its talent to stay? Or will the brain drain become a slow bleed that weakens the nation from within? Number 7. Aging population crisis. Australia is getting older, fast. By 2030, more than 1 in 5 Australians will be over the age of 65. That might not sound alarming at first, but this shift is creating a massive imbalance in society. More retirees mean fewer people working, fewer people paying taxes, and more people depending on government support for healthcare, pensions, and aged care. It's a slow-moving crisis, but it's already straining the system. Think of it like this. As the working age population shrinks, the burden on younger generations skyrockets. Who will fund the pensions? Who will fill the gaps in the workforce? Already, hospitals and aged care facilities are facing critical staff shortages. Rural towns are turning into retirement villages as young people move to cities, leaving behind aging communities with no one to support them. And it's not just about money, it's about health. Older Australians are living longer, but with chronic illnesses that require expensive, long-term care. The healthcare system is under pressure, and without urgent reform, wait times will increase, quality of care will drop, and the most vulnerable will suffer. This isn't just a demographic trend, it's a ticking time bomb. Without bold policies to balance immigration, support caregivers, and encourage later life workforce participation, the economy could grind to a halt, and social services could collapse under the weight. Will Australia act in time, or will the aging wave silently overwhelm the nation? Number 8. Housing affordability collapse. Once known as the Great Australian Dream, owning a home is now becoming the Great Australian Illusion. For many young Australians, the idea of buying a house feels as distant as winning the lottery. Median house prices in major cities like Sydney and Melbourne have soared past $1 million, while wages have barely kept up. This isn't just a housing problem, it's a national crisis. Renters aren't spared either. Rental prices have hit record highs, and with vacancy rates at all-time lows, families are being pushed into housing insecurity or even homelessness. Middle-class Australians, teachers, nurses, young professionals are now being priced out of the very communities they serve. More and more are forced into multi-generational living, long commutes, or unstable short-term leases. This crisis isn't just about affordability, it's about mental health, social mobility, and national identity. People are delaying major life steps, marriage, children, retirement, because they simply can't find stable, affordable housing. And it's not just affecting individuals, it's stifling the economy too. When people spend more on rent or mortgages, they spend less on everything else. Worse still, there's a growing gap between the have homes and the have-nots. Investors scoop up properties while first-time buyers are left behind, deepening the divide between generations. How did Australia, a country once celebrated for its quality of life, become a place where shelter is a luxury? If nothing changes, the collapse of housing affordability could become the foundation of widespread economic and social instability. Number 9. Political instability and distrust. How can a country move forward when its own people no longer trust the system? In Australia, political instability has become the norm, not the exception. Over the past 15 years, the country has seen 7 different prime ministers, constant leadership spills, and major policy flip-flops. For everyday Australians, it's created a deep sense of confusion, frustration, and disillusionment. People no longer feel like their voices matter. From climate policy to housing, from healthcare to Indigenous rights, promises are made, then broken. Governments change, plans are scrapped, and nothing truly feels long-term. This cycle of instability has bred a dangerous consequence: a growing distrust in democracy itself. The rise of misinformation, populist rhetoric, and anti-government sentiment is no longer just on the fringe. More citizens are tuning out of